Hey everybody, welcome to another DVD Blu-ray collection updates video. A boy named Charlie Brown. This is the Peanuts documentary 1963, not the movie. But anyway, if you like more updates like this, click the subscribe button, hit that bell notification for more. This is the Peanuts documentary that was created by the guys who they did a Willie Mays documentary. And this is the only way you could have found this was through the Charles Schulz Museum in California, and I found this at a mom and pop store, and I'm glad I found it. But yeah, this is the actual original documentary, and what's interesting is that I've never even seen this, so I don't even know what's on this. And there's a little story, a little insert in here that describes the story. The story of a boy named Charlie Brown began in 1963 when I formed my own production company with fellow Stanford graduate Sheldon Fay Jr. While looking for ideas for our first project, I happened to be reading a book by sports journalist Charlie Einstein about baseball great Willie Mays. I called Charlie to see if Willie and he might be interested in creating a documentary. To my amazement, they both agreed, and to my further amazement, NBC bought the show. Although A Man Named Mays aired against the year's blockbuster television program Elizabeth Taylor in London, we did surprisingly well in the ratings. For our next project, it occurred to me that since we had just profiled the world's greatest baseball player, why not profile the world's worst baseball player, Charlie Brown, and its creator, Charles Schulz? I was surprised to find Schulz, Sparky to his friends, listed in the phone book. I called and introduced myself. Fortunately, as a lifelong baseball fan, and in particular a fan of Willie Mays, he had watched our documentary and thoroughly enjoyed it. He invited me to visit. When we met, Sparky agreed to be the subject of our documentary, even though there was no guarantee that it would air. Sheldon filmed Sparky at work in his art studio and journeyed with him through a typical day. The completed documentary was really very good, but we couldn't sell it to a network or a sponsor. It looked like our program was destined for a typical Charlie Brown ending. A few years later, after the success of A Charlie Brown Christmas, we had an opportunity to give our program new life. We combined segments from the unaired documentary with new footage, and the resulting show played on CBS in May 1969 with a new title, Charlie Brown and Charles Schulz. So in other words, this is the original unaltered form. This is the original unaired documentary that you could have only found if you went to the Charles Schulz Museum or found it accidentally at a mom and pop store like I did. I'm glad I bought it. Next we have Power from 1986. This is an underrated Sidney Lumet film dealing with a manipulator played by Richard Gere who works for TV political ads for these politicians. He gets caught in this sort of war between these two politicians, and pretty much the struggles that they're trying to gain votes, they're trying to gain all the power, but it's kind of an interesting film dealing with how political campaigns are run and sort of what the type of things that people will do to gain more votes. And yeah, this is a client maybe enmeshed in a scandal hunting of foreign money, corrupting U.S. elections. It's worth checking out. Richard Gere, Denzel Washington, Gene Hackman, Julie Christie, underrated. Next we have If Beale Street Could Talk, directed by Barry Jenkins, who also did Moonlight. Haven't seen this in a long time, so. Regina King won Best Supporting Actress Oscar for this. Haven't seen it in a while. And speaking of romance, we have Call Me By Your Name. Timothée Chalamet and his family are visiting Italy during the 80s, and then he meets up with this handsome guy played by Armie Hammer. The two of them become romantically involved with one another. And this is a really well done film. It's not perfect, mind you, but it is a really good romantic drama. Well acted by Timothée Chalamet and Armie Hammer. This is nice cinematography, good music, and overall it's just an interesting film. But even better than that is Blue Valentine. Ryan Gosling and Michelle Williams are married. They have a kid, but their relationship is rocky. Over the course of the film, you get to see how their relationship developed through flashbacks. So what we have here is a movie that really shines in terms of showing us what their relationship was like before their relationship started to crumble. It does a good job. I want to say it does a good job, and it actually I'm not usually a fan because I prefer my films chronological, but given the circumstance, I make this an exception. It's a really well done. This is one of those stories. This is one of those films that needs more attention and needs more exposure because it was that well done. It's one of those smaller stories that doesn't get a lot of marketing. Doesn't get a lot of notice. While on the subject of romance, Wuthering Heights. Now, this was based on a well-known novel, and there are many adaptations of this story, but the one that I would go for is this one from 1939 with Maury Orbison and Laurence Olivier. I mean, if you want to check out one of the other versions, that's fine, but my personal recommendation is Laurence Olivier. Unsane. Claire Foy plays a woman who believes that somebody is after her, and she gets put in a correctional facility, and you have to decide whether she's telling the truth or not. That's the whole movie. It's kind of interesting, but I think the less you know about this movie, the better, so I'm just going to leave it at that. Good news, everybody! I like good news. This is an MGM musical that a lot of people don't know. This is another one of these college musicals. A lot of people probably are familiar with these. Maybe not. Too Many Girls is easily the best one of the college musicals, the glory days of the movie musical. Too Many Girls is the best one. This is probably my second best. There's like one scene that takes place in a gymnasium that's really good, but yeah, other than that, I mean, it's still pretty good. If you can find yourself a copy. The original Prom Night. Now, I did see the remake. I may have liked it then, but after I saw the original, it just kind of blew that movie totally out of the water. I don't want to give too much away, but basically, I remember when I was 14, I was watching all kinds of trailers for these movies. And I remember for one ad stuck out to me when it came to this movie. It had a tagline of, "If you're not back by midnight, you won't be coming home." I'm like, what does that mean? Like, what is it? And at the time I was 14 and I was learning about inferencing. So I had to kind of, since I was too young to see these movies, I had to kind of assume that it was like this killer going around and like, killing these like teenagers in a school prom. Yeah, this was put out by Synapse. However, if you watch the actual movie, if you actually watch this, it's not what you'd expect. It's not what you expect at all. If you know Prom Night because of a remake, you're missing out. I also saw Hello Mary Lou Prom Night 2. I'm probably one of the very few people who can say, hey, I've seen Prom Night 2. Which has nothing to do with this movie, by the way. Has nothing to do with that movie at all. So next up is Con Air. So Jerry Bruckheimer is doing all kinds of crazy things. This is one of them. So Nicolas Cage is trying to get out of prison for on good behavior because he wants to see his family. But then he and a bunch of other prisoners on his plane heading off somewhere, and Malkovich, one of the prisoners, decides to take over the plane. Cage is stuck in this position, he can't get out of it, but he ends up being a good guy at the end of the day. And John Cusack is trying to figure out what's going on. Yeah, what's interesting about this movie is that I didn't think that I would like this movie as much as I did. I didn't think like, oh, this is painfully stupid. But no, it actually ended up being entertaining. You'd be surprised that sometimes these stupid action movies can be entertaining. Sometimes. It depends on how they're written. And this one was definitely written decently, but not The Girl with a Dragon Tattoo. If you're familiar with the novels, then this was directed by David Fincher. But you might also know the, I don't know if it's French or Dutch or whatever, but you may know those movies. This is the American one. And this is the one I saw. Actually, when I first saw this, I couldn't even get through it. But then I saw it again, and it got better after that. So, Daniel Craig plays a journalist who, his career is basically over. And Christopher Plummer offers him a job to investigate what happened to his daughter, his granddaughter, who disappeared. Yeah, I think it's his daughter, but anyway, his daughter went missing 30 years ago. and he asks Craig to investigate what happened to her. And his assistant is hacker Rooney Mara, also known as the Girl with a Dragon Tattoo. This is not for everybody. I don't recommend this for everybody because this movie is very dark. It's very heavy on adult subject matter. It deals with murder, but even more so, it deals with rape. I think it happens twice, but if you can handle it, it's worth checking out. It's not like it's shock value or anything. It only happens early in the movie and it doesn't happen ever again. It's a good movie. It's a good movie, don't get me wrong, but it's a well-written mystery crime film. But again, you have to be in the right mood for it, or at the very least be familiar with source material. Otherwise, you're gonna be creeped out by it. Up next, we have Ford versus Ferrari. Carroll Shelby and Ken Miles, they made a deal with Ford Company to create a car that would compete with a Ferrari in the 1966 Le Mans. For Le Mans, for those of you who don't know what it is, basically this long 24-hour track that basically it goes on for like 24 hours nonstop. So we're trying to compete. With Ferrari because Ferrari was the fastest car during the 1960s, and so they wanted to create a car that would compete with it and win. This is a great true story movie, but the only accuracy I noticed was one scene where they're trying to get the support of Ford by the son of Henry Ford to continue work on the project. And Ken was the one originally driving the car, not Carroll. But also, Henry Ford Jr. was not even in the car. Well, he was in the car, but he didn't make the deal right there and then. It was later on when they made the deal to continue support. But other than that, the fact that there's no CG in the movie is a highlight. The fact that it was all real was a huge bonus, and the fact that it's decently accurate for most parts. Again, this movie shines. Next up, we have This Film Is Not Yet Rated, a documentary about the MPAA rating system and how films are rated R or NC-17. First off, the NC-17 rating is not a bad thing. It's not pornographic. It's not even that explicit half the time. It's mainly adult themed that is made for a specific audience that wouldn't fly in an R rating. So it should not be feared, but again, this movie sort of sparks the debate of like why certain movies that aren't that explicit get NC-17 and a movie that's rated R that has a lot of like maybe violence or sexuality get an R rating and they're really intense, but not something that's like NC-17. And they bring up a couple examples from people like John Waters, creators of South Park, Kimberly Pierce, who did Boys Don't Cry. Yeah, this is a really interesting documentary, really poignant, on point in many areas, and it works. 21 Bridges. This is a Chadwick Boseman performance that's worth your time. So he plays an NYPD cop who is cracking down on these cop killers, and his method is to shut down all the 21 bridges that lead in and out of New York City. And you wonder throughout the movie, like, why... You wonder his motivations versus sort of web going on. I don't want to give too much away, but it's a very underrated film that a lot of people don't talk about, and it's worth your time. Alright, so that does it for now. So, until next time, I will see all of you later.